Hey, this is going to be a really short and simple video because, this is just something to get off my chest. So I'm really sorry because none of this is scripted at all. But essentially, I want to talk about something that I've been noticing a lot, which is that, like, people are giving lip service to isekai in the context of shousetu ga ninaru. And so, what do I mean by that? So, I mean, a lot of people are like, okay, I know that isekai, or at least like modern day naro, come from shousetsu ga ni naro. They come from there, and so on and so forth. But it's still bad, still bad. You know, and it's just like, oh, the stories are bad. They're poorly written, and so on and so forth. And I think, yeah, if these stories are not your cup of tea, I think that's totally fine. But the fact that, like, you're pretending like this narrative functions in this way in which you're like, oh yeah, it's bad. It's I think it's really lazy. All right, and I'm going to explain why, because it kind of misses like the forest for the trees in a weird way. Right now, here I am on Shosetsu. I have it cut off at the top because I have a secret account on Shosetsu where I write an insanely shitty story. And so, yeah, I don't want anybody to know that. You got the website here, and then all the you got the rankings, and you can go further into the rankings and updates, all that kind of stuff. But it gets really important because when you log in, so I'm just gonna log in real quick. When you log into Shosetsu, it generates a completely different interface, and on this interface, you've got chapter updates. Oh my god. You got chapter updates, and then you've got blog updates, and then on the side here, you've got like people you can follow. They're almost always going to be like artists of some kind, unless there's like a commenter that you really think is funny or somewhat, that kind of stuff. And then you have like further control panel stuff. So this is the page you will see if you have a Shosetsu account. And this is really important, right? Because when we think about isekai in the context of like the kinds of story they tell, these authors can essentially write at whatever pace they want to write it at, whatever pace they want to dictate it at, because it's very much a sort of like online fan fiction kind of like setup where you write your story, you publish it, and then people give you feedback. That's kind of the thing. And, as a result, you can see here, we've got blog posts by these authors, like, for example, here, we've got Kanikiru Kogitsune, he's got a new blog post here, so on, so forth, whatever. Yeah, I think that's just a anniversary kind of thing. And then we've got chapter updates here. So chapter updates. There we go. We've got Tateno. Tateno Yusha with the Shield Hero anime by Aniko. She has, as you can see, she's got a lot of chapters that she's been writing since 2012. And then so we can go to the most recent chapter. We can look at the most recent chapter. And then so here's the thing. After, let's say I've read this chapter, and then at the bottom of the chapter, leave comments and feedbacks about like the structure, style, and writing, give it points, and then like this ranking affects like the ranking of the story. And then down here, I can leave like more like involved feedback and so on and so forth. And so this is kind of a really important thing to consider that a lot of people just don't really consider, which is that when you look at, like, for example, let's go back to Kanikiru, right? You go to Kanikiru's account, and then you see not only all of the stuff that he's written, over time and the tags that are associated with it, but you also, for example, see the people he follows. So, these are other authors he follows, and all of their other works, that kind of stuff, So the important thing to remember here is that like these authors are operating in this environment in which their dashboard is very similar to like mine, for example, in that they will always be getting updates on whatever is happening at the time with new people, new articles, etc., etc., etc. And they will also be updated in terms of blog posts. When you go to let's go to Aneko, because she's actually been pretty She's actually been pretty active for a really long time. So let's go to her blog post, and let's go right to the end here. Yeah. So, oh, that's too far back. But, so, like, let's go here, right? 2013, this is when, like, she's, like, she's doing a lot of, like, tate no yusha stuff, She's doing a lot of tate no yusha stuff, and then she's talking about, like, all this kind of stuff, like, yeah, so, like, over here, she's talking about, like, the character archetypes, and then she's, like, so, essentially the main thing I want, but like these are in responses to like comments other people leave on her blog, and so essentially the important thing to consider here, and as you can see, I've read a lot of her blog. We talk about the stories and how like these people craft these stories. They're always like reacting to like how audiences react to their new chapters, and so it's a really really fast feedback loop in which the author can like sometimes be writing a story, they might come back to it, there might be long gaps of time between like stories and chapters and so on and so forth, or they might be doing this on a regular basis. And so the implication here is that like we get to see what are supposed to be like really drafty processes, but like we don't really know exactly how drafty they are and so on and so forth and all that kind of stuff. What ends up happening is a very sort of I would say like sort of like exploded image of like storytelling. We don't read these stories singularly. Like this is the thing that's important. Like we don't, if you're reading it on syosetu, you don't read these stories like singularly as like, oh yeah, now I'm gonna read all of Shield Hero. It's if you follow these authors and then you read the chapters and the posts as it comes up, and they all inform what's happening, but you also read other authors as well. It's like this reading practice that's like things are always in orbit. They're always like, I might read like a chapter of this thing one day, I might read a chapter of this other thing another day, I might read another chapter of this another thing another day, and so on and so on and so forth. And it just kind of happens in perpetuity as long as I'm on syosetu. And that happens for the authors as well. They're writing with this system in mind. They're writing like little bits and pieces, over long periods of time. But at the same time, they're always informed by the authors that they follow and the authors that they like. The implication now, therefore, is that by doing this, they have a very fragmented kind of storytelling, but it's not like an accidentally or an incompetent fragmentation. It's very knowing and very aware of the system that they have to deal with as a publishing platform. I don't know. A lot of people have this thing where they're just like, yeah, I know it's from Shosetsuka Ninaro, I know that it's from here, but then they go on and treat like these singular texts as like these immutable singular like books that like from the beginning to an end with like a clear functional like thing when like the thing is that like I don't know, the web novels and like the light novels and stuff like that, there are changes, but they vary. The amount of changes vary wildly per author. So there's no foolproof system in place that says like, this is how much or how little should be changed. And it can get really sort of confusing, especially when you deal with authors that are hugely popular, but they don't really have much else, I guess. I don't know. It's just, like I said, this is not scripted. So obviously the people, some people might say, well, okay, well, wait a minute. This is exactly what DeviantArt does. Like I follow people on DeviantArt or, on Wattpad or fanfiction.net, etc., etc., etc. Like, what is it doing differently from these sites? My answer is nothing. It's doing absolutely nothing different. But here's the rub. Because that a lot of these texts are now becoming really popular and they're getting adapted into shows, now people are pushing back. This has been around for a really long time. But like nobody cares about it because it didn't penetrate their special anime space or whatever, But now that it is, they're just like, oh no, bad storytelling. And it's just like, well, tell me how in the context of the platform in which these things are being published in, how they constitute bad storytelling. Like fundamentally on its formal levels. Don't just tell me that you don't like it and therefore it's bad storytelling. I mean, that's ridiculous. Like, I don't open up a Danielle Steele novel and then be like, oh yeah, this is bad storytelling. It's ridiculous. Like, I don't do that because, like, that's not the kind of thing that I'm interested in. I just simply say, I'm not a fan of Danielle Steele novels, but there's this weird sort of, like, pedestalization that I'm seeing a lot, which is, like, people, like, put it up on this pedestal, and they're just like, this is bad storytelling, how could this happen, etc., etc. But, yeah, I know it's some syosetu ga ni naru, but they don't try to understand exactly how the platform actually affects the idea in which we read stories and how these authors write stories, because they're also readers. They also read other stories on the platform. And so it's a very sort of, like, in-group that's really, like, affected by this community. And yet, at the same time, we pretend like these things don't exist. There's, like, some sort of weird, like, sort of erasure. And what matters is, like, this emphasizing of the form? Like, come on, man. Come on. Like, are you kidding me?